Hello everyone, welcome to our online session now. I know things are a little bit different since last time we met, but I can't tell you how happy I am that we've returned to being able to show you some new things that we're doing, and I can't wait for you to also be in our brand new beautiful building. State of the arts. I cannot wait. So I decided to prepare some New Orleans traditional desserts along with our jambalaya as well. That won't happen today. However, what will be happening is our delicious bread pudding and some beignets. So growing up, because you know I have history to tell always, we always had bread pudding. And my mother swears by Commander's Palace in New Orleans, bread pudding. And it sort of souffles up, and I quite haven't mastered, at least according to my mother, but it is a delicious souffle. But I'm going to make our standard souffle that I grew up with as a kid and enjoy to this day. I love custard. My mom always put raisins inside. She always used not just vanilla extract, but almond extract. And then she would make a yummy sauce or just dust it with powdered sugar. So on holidays, we always had bread pudding. Now, you might wonder to yourself, well, where exactly does bread pudding come from? In culinary school in France, we always were making bread pudding. And it didn't have that name to it, of course, but we made some form of bread pudding. And it has very humble beginnings. Way back when, there was always some type of bread. And it wasn't necessarily leavened bread or bread using wheat. When it finally came to Americas was when it changed to using wheat. But oftentimes it was probably a little brick hard and used with cornmeal. It was actually soaked in water and then sugar was added to it. And different places around the world made their contributions to what we know today as bread pudding with rose water and almonds. And so if you went to Egypt or India, there was some variation of this dessert. And then it eventually came to us here in the States, and most popular in New Orleans. Well, why New Orleans? Well, many moons ago, when the French came to the eastern part of Canada, where they settled, they were eventually sort of pushed out by the British. This area was Acadia. So the Acadians eventually migrated to Louisiana and there brought their customs and culture to the beautiful city of New Orleans. So I'm going to get started. You should have a recipe, and you could use just about any type of bread that you want. I love using old croissants. It could be chocolate croissants or danishes, brioche bread, which is one of my favorites. I'm just using some simple sandwich bread. It was a little thick, and I cut it into small pieces. And I didn't save any, but I cut it into small pieces. And day-old bread is kind of great because it dries out. It's even okay and acceptable if you were to cut that bread and leave it out exposed for a bit, just to get rid of some of the moisture. When you don't have, or when you have too much moisture left in the bread, and then it's going to sit in a liquid that's full of course, there's a lot of moisture there. Then it becomes kind of soggy and it loses its texture. So we want to leave a little bit of texture on it. Another way that you can dry out the bread is to cut those pieces. I toss them in a little bit of melted butter, and then I put them in the oven for a few minutes without giving them too much browning, just to give it a little drying out and a little bit of texture. So I've done that part already. The next part is also very, very uncomplicated, and that's the custard. Most custards will contain some variation of dairy, like milk and heavy cream, and or half and half. You can do lots of different combinations. And then, of course, eggs, whole eggs. Are there variations doing something differently with eggs? Yes, you could use whole eggs and yolks, and then reserve some of your egg whites and prepare a meringue and fold it into your mixture at the end. And that's what's going to give it a more soufflé finish to your dessert. Then, of course, there's sugar. I'm using granulated sugar, but you could use another type of sugar. You could even use a syrup like date syrup, which is a healthier version of a sugar, or you can use brown sugar. I'm using, as far as spices go, I'm using cinnamon. Not going to use nutmeg in this recipe. However, you can use nutmeg. My mom, again, swears by the almond extract. So I'm using both vanilla and almond extract in this recipe. And I also have a little bit of cinnamon, and I have butter. So I'm going to melt my butter inside of my liquid. So I am using, you're wondering why it's just this much, I'm using a half of recipe today. So in a pot, your liquid, and also my butter. And I am just going to scald this liquid. Make sure it's nice and hot, almost as like a simmering. Okay? And in the meantime, I'm going to whisk together my eggs and sugar. You don't have to whisk it until it's super creamy, but make sure it's thoroughly incorporated. Bit of vanilla that I'm going to add to it once I introduce the milk, and my cinnamon and almond extract I put together already with my vanilla. So let's talk about fruit and other items that you might put into your bread pudding. So my mom always put all kinds of fruits in there, most notably sauteed apples or sauteed pears, and something that I didn't think to do sooner, the idea came to me later, something very popular would be bananas. Now, another very popular dessert in New Orleans is bananas Foster, and that came to be at a restaurant, and now I can't think of the name of it, but it will come to me. And those, the chef had actually prepared bananas Foster for a politician, and that's how it got its name. His last name was Foster, and so it became bananas Foster. So that dessert is absolutely lovely when you kind of combine its components into bread pudding. Raisins is also very popular. My mom always used golden raisins instead of your standard raisins. You can plump them up. You can even plump them up in perhaps a little bit of rum. Warm it up, and you'll also get a little rumminess added into it. Okay, so my milk, heavy cream, and butter is scalded along with my butter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a towel down so that my bowl doesn't move all over the place. And I'm going to temper in my hot mixture so I don't have scrambled eggs. And this is sort of like the beginning stages of making any custard. It's always heating up your dairy and putting together some combination of eggs and sugar, and then scalding it with your hot milk, and then baking it or returning it to the stove top. In this case, it's going to get finished in the in the oven. But creme brulee and creme caramel, also known as flan, or what are some other desserts that we've made? Pot of creme, pastry cream. So that is the end of that. I'm going to pour this now into a liquid measuring container so that it's something with a spout, so that it's simple to pour into some ramekins. Now, I have already placed my bread inside of my little aluminum ramekins here. I did butter these containers. So take a little bit of butter, swipe the butter around the sides and a little bit on the bottom. I also have some dried cherries and chocolate chips that I put inside. Alternatively, I could have taken some chocolate and melted it with my hot milk and heavy cream, and then I would have a chocolate bread pudding. So that also is very, very yummy. So now I'm going to pour my liquid right over my bread, and I might come back a little bit more because the bread is going to absorb the liquid. So every time I make bread pudding or anything to do with family, any food to do with family tradition, even when my mother is not around, my mother is right in my ear right now. And she's saying to me right now, you know, that bread is just a little too baked or too cooked. You shouldn't have let it go that brown. So I hear her saying that to me now. And she might say, why didn't you use raisins? So, you know, I'm just going to do it my way, and hopefully she won't see any evidence of this. So I'm coming back over and let this soak. A good 30 minutes to an hour should be sufficient. So I think I can fill those up. So if you have about a 4-ounce container, like I have here, you could probably get a dozen of these with the whole recipe. Now, I have prepared bread pudding without a water bath. I have prepared bread puddings with a water bath. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a water bath, and I'm going to cover it. And these will not take very long to bake because I made them on the small side. So the deeper it is, the longer it's going to take. So a smaller container like this will probably take about 18 minutes or so. Not much longer than that. I will do a check at around 15 minutes and see where I am with that. Now, typically, I would let this sit for a while, but for the sake of time, I'm going to leave it as such, and I'm going to put it in the oven. And I am baking that at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. course, you know how savvy I am, right? I wouldn't just leave you hanging and waiting for 20 or 30 minutes. Voila! I have some bread pudding, the magic of Zoom, right? Already prepared here. I also made a casserole batch, and I took a round cutter, and I cut some out for you. So there's all sorts of wonderful sauces that you can prepare. The one that we have here is just a basic chocolate sauce with chocolate that's been melted with heavy cream, and it's got a nice fluid texture to it. You can do a caramel sauce, and prepare some cooked sugar, take it to a caramel stage, turn it down a bit, and then add some warmed cream, stir that and cook that for a few moments, and then add a little bit of butter at the end. And if you're doing it for a group that does not have people under 21, then you might decide to add maybe a little bit of rum or Grand Marnier to it. And again, I don't want to forget to tell you about other flavors, but orange zest goes so wonderful with chocolate, so I could have added that to it, or maybe lemon zest. So lots of different variations with this. As I was doing some research on bread pudding, when I thought how dreadful that they did this, soaked it in water and added sugar to that. But, that was, in the 15th century or something, and that worked. And as it traveled, it made all sorts of variations. And there was another one that had a combination of cheese and brown sugar, and that one just sort of, I'm so happy that this version, came to be with all the wonderful, beautiful breads that we have to utilize making this. So I'm going to drizzle a little bit of, or I'm going to cut some strawberries first. So I'm going to serve this with just some fresh fruit that I have. Strawberries. So I'm just going to do a little drizzle. And I'm going to do some powdered sugar on top. And some strawberries. And there you have it. Some New Orleans bread pudding, and yummy, and you've got to have it warm. It loses its appeal as it cools off for my taste. Some desserts, it's fine that it's cold, but there's nothing better than warm bread pudding. So enjoy.